Good evening and welcome to the channel's studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. Tens of thousands of protesters are closing in on Pakistan's capital Islamabad as part of nationwide protests calling for the release of the former Prime Minister Imran Khan. The march is in response to a final protest call made by Khan to his supporters, where he also called on them to remain in the capital until the government addresses their demands. Some top leaders of Khan's PTI party met him at the Rawalpindi prison, where he is serving a 3-year jail term for corruption, a charge he denies. Authorities have put Islamabad under lockdown, blocking highways and suspending mobile and internet services in certain areas. The march, which began on Sunday, has seen police using tear gas against protesters and reportedly arresting hundreds. A far-right pro-Russia candidate is set for a shock victory in the first round of Romania's presidential election, with preliminary results leaving the Prime Minister, his main pro-European rival, out of the race. With more than 99% of votes accounted, ultra-nationalist Calin Georgescu has an unassailable lead of nearly 350,000 votes over centre-right candidate Elena Lasconi, with Prime Minister Marcel Ciolacu the pre-election favourite in third. The strong showing of Georgescu, who has no party of his own and campaigned largely on the social media platform TikTok, came as the biggest surprise of the election. Lasconi is now on track to challenge Georgescu in a final runoff on the 8th of December. Meanwhile, a left-wing former history teacher, Yamandu Orsi, has won the presidential election in Uruguay. Orsi beat Alvaro Delgado, the candidate for the governing Conservative coalition, by more than 3 percentage points in Sunday's runoff. Delgado conceded defeat and congratulated Orsi and his Broad Front coalition, which will now return to power after 5 years of Conservative rule. The Broad Front governed Uruguay for 15 years, from 2005 to 2020, before being beaten by outgoing President Luis Lacalle Pou, who under Uruguay's constitution was barred from standing for a second consecutive term in this election. At least one person has died and 3 others have been injured after a cargo plane crashed near Vilnius airport in Lithuania in the early hours of Monday. The Boeing 737, operated for DHL by the Spanish cargo airline Swiftair, crashed near a house as it was in its final approach for landing. All 12 people have been safely evacuated from a property close to the crash site, according to police. The aircraft departed from DHL's hub at Leipzig airport just after 3 a.m. local time and crashed around an hour and a half later. Israel's military says around 250 rockets have been fired by Hezbollah across the border from Lebanon, marking one of the heaviest bombardments of Israel since fighting intensified in September. Several people were injured and buildings damaged in northern and central Israel, some of them near Tel Aviv. The attacks followed an Israeli strike on central Beirut on Saturday, in which the Lebanese health ministry said 29 people had been killed. Hezbollah, which has previously vowed to respond to attacks on Beirut by targeting Tel Aviv, said it had launched precision missiles at 2 military sites in the city and nearby. 2 turkeys called Peach and Blossom have been introduced at this year's National Thanksgiving, both set for their official pardon at the White House, the last in the Biden administration.
They're roughly 17 weeks old.
John Zimmerman, chairman of the National Turkey Federation and a second-generation farmer, raised the turkeys with his family in Northfield in Minnesota.
And I'd like you to meet Peach and Blossom.
His 9-year-old son Grant revealed the turkeys' names during a news conference. This year's ceremony marks the 77th annual National Thanksgiving Turkey presentation, continuing a cherished holiday tradition dating back to the Truman administration. And the 12th National Traditional Games of Ethnic Minorities of China has seen coconut tree climbing for the first time. It is a race against time and a battle of techniques, and since this sport's most important apparatus is unique to Hainan province, it is no wonder that the hosts are pretty good at it. The Hainan team swept both the men's and women's titles in the debuted coconut tree climbing competition at China's biggest ethnic sports event. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the channel's studios in Lagos.